Hello, everyone. This is going to be part 2 of The President's Part 2 featuring Louis C.K. This is the Shane Gillis, was it Matt and Shane and Matt secret podcast or something? Something like that. They're starting Teddy Roosevelt. 18 minutes. That's going to be a 17-minute. That'd be a 21-minute. So I might stop after Teddy. I might take it to... I might cover Taft, Woodrow Wilson. I don't know yet. Let's get into the video.
1900, he wins the election, this time with his vice president, Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes.
And we can get into Teddy, dude.
So Teddy, fascinating thing about Teddy, first of all, Teddy was born deformed.
Yeah.
His lungs and his organs were too small for his chest cavity. And his doctor told his father he's got to stay in bed and he'll probably die in his teens.
Yeah.
So he told Teddy, well, you weren't born with much of a body, so you'll have to make your body. And Teddy just became insane and walked up the Matterhorn, just walked up it.
Dude.
He was a ball of insane energy. He would just do anything.
Yeah, he's kind of...
He would do what you consider like early calisthenics, early exercises, because he had really bad asthma. So he conquered that by making himself run, jump. He turned himself into an athlete in a way, figuring that if his asthma was triggered by, hard work, then he would work harder so that the asthma couldn't work. And it worked. I mean, he really got himself under control. He just, maybe he just grew up as he got old. He grew up. As he grew up, he kind of grew out of it. We don't know, but yeah, he was one of those guys where they were told, you have asthma, you got to be careful, and he was like, good, I'm gonna run, jump. I'm gonna live like a crazy boy, and I'm gonna work it out of me.
terrifying.
He was, and he was kind of an animal.
Yeah.
But also very intuitive, very brilliant guy. Like, he was the first guy that they did like caricatures of. Like, he saw, because he had his crazy big teeth and his glasses. So he was the first guy that they drew like this funny version of him, and he liked it. He thought, that's cool because they're thinking about me. The fact that they're caricaturizing me means that I'm an icon. I'm something above, and he liked it. So he let that proliferate. But the other thing about him is that he didn't like being in charge of things. He liked being number 2. So like, they asked him to run New York City Police Department, and he became a commissioner. He's like, I'll just be one of the commissioners. He was like number 2, but he ran everything from that number 2 position because he knew number 1 is like the shittiest job in any place. So he started, I don't know, I'm uneducated and I read this a long time ago, but I think he invented the police academy. Because New York, or at least he put one in New York City. In New York City, to be a cop, you had to be in a family of cops, or you had to pay somebody, because it was the easiest job in the world. You just walked around in the uniform, and cops used to sleep like in alleys. And they didn't do it. They never stopped crime.
Yeah.
And they just get paid to protect one gang or the other in New York City. And they were all fat and often quite old. So Teddy said, there's age restriction. You can't be old. He said, you have to be in shape. You have to go to an academy and you have to train to be a cop. You have to be taught. You have to have an education. You get taught lots of things in an academy. It's a school. And so he started that. Police department hated him. He pushed it through. He reformed the New York Police Department to the point, and this is where he was better than other politicians. He wanted to test them and show that they were honest. And the only way to do that is to have them enforce a law that everybody hates. So I think the law was that you couldn't drink on Sundays. So he had the cops go around New York City and bust anybody who was drinking on a Sunday. And 100% of New Yorkers hated him for this. Yeah. And they ran him out of town on a rail. And he was fired. But
one thing to add, not to add, side note, when he was the chief or not the chief, but he was in charge. He used to walk the streets at night because he would hear the cops who were out walking the streets at night were getting into drugs, or they were drinking, or they were having sex with prostitutes. And so he just walked the streets just to see what it was like. Were you safe? You know, because people, and he would go out in like a disguise, and he just wanted to know, were the police doing their job? Were you safe to walk the street? And he had one incident where he came across 2 police officers. I want to say one was drinking, or he was sleeping like on a stairwell, like on a concrete stoop stairwell, sleeping from, you know, passing out drunk. And the other cop that was with him was like, had a woman pinned against the wall, and they're just making out. Like, it wasn't, you know, sexual assault or anything. She's probably a prostitute, and they were just making out. And Roosevelt walks up and just asks the guy, hey, should you be doing that? You know, your buddy's drunk. Shouldn't you guys be out? And the cop's like, you know, move it. Get out of here, buddy. Who do you think you are? And Teddy Roosevelt's like, oh, okay. You'll find out who I am. He walked away. The next morning, he had both of those guys in his office, and they recognized him. I think the other guy woke up, but they recognized him. He immediately had them fired. But they came, you know, walking in, and they realized, oh, yep. Well, I think the drunk guy might have woke up and told the other guy, you know, hey, told him like, you know, hey, get out of here, or we'll bust you, and blah blah. Yeah, it was kind of funny.
It was like mission accomplished. Teddy would do everything until he was despised. Like he would go past the point, because his goal was the goal. The goal is the cops are better, not everybody loves Teddy. Yeah. So then every time he got fired, he would just go to Montana and live in a fucking hut and kill buffalo.
Yeah, he moved to... So while he was still working, he took a train out to the Badlands in Montana. And there's a story I want to tell about one of his experiences there, but I want to wait and see if it gets brought up, because it's so... If you know anything about Teddy Roosevelt, it's Teddy Roosevelt. It's great. It's a wonderful story. And okay, I'll come back to that.
And then they went, and people would send emissaries and say, please run in this, please run this company, please run this company. He would always say no. And then they came to him and asked him to run the U.S. Navy. He did a similar thing to the United States Navy, which I know less about.
Yeah. He was obsessed with the war in 1812. I think he wrote a book on it.
Yeah.
He wrote several books about war, and they are considered good, but they're just methodically bogged down with so much detail, because the guy loved detail. So they're not going to get in the story. So I'll tell you, there's 2 of them. And I don't know if I've ever told the second one before, but let's pretend I haven't. So the first one is, he's out in the Badland. He showed up, and this was a guy who dressed like a fancy New Yorker boy. Now he's out with nothing but cowboys in the Badlands. He's like at this saloon, and this guy comes walking over and tries to intimidate him. And like, he's making fun of his clothes and everything. And Teddy's just sitting there. And the guy sits down at the table, and he's insulting him. And Teddy Roosevelt's just being really nice, not saying anything. And then the guy gets up and makes a little smart comment. And I want to say he knocks his beer over or something. And Teddy says something like, are you going to pay for that? You're going to buy me a new one? And the guy's like, no. And Teddy Roosevelt's like, well, if you don't, I'm going to have to knock you out. You know, he didn't say that. Oh, I'll have to punch you in the face. You know, something like that. So all the people in this bar saloon are kind of like, oh yeah, we're about to watch a young man from New York get his butt beat. You know, no one who's going to back Teddy Roosevelt when they know this other guy who intimidates people. And Teddy stands up, takes off his jacket, puts it on his chair, rolls up his sleeves, and says, like, I'm going to count to 3. If you know you're not going to get me a new drink, I'm going to count to 3 and I'm going to punch you. And the guy's just like, oh yeah. And Teddy Roosevelt's like, yep, 1, and just punches. Doesn't get to 3, just starts the count. 1, bam, hits the guy right in the nose, drops him. The guy's like on the ground, like, you know, like, what the hell? And everyone's just like, okay, like, this guy really just punched. Like, no one believed that he would do it, but not only did he punch the guy, he dropped the guy. So Roosevelt helps him up. Roosevelt's like, are we okay? And the guy's like, yeah, we're fine. And Roosevelt's like, are you going to buy me another drink? And the guy's like, you know, no. And Roosevelt's like, okay, you know, we're all square. So he puts his hand out, helps the guy up, and hits him again, drops him. And Roosevelt's like, are you going to buy me a drink? And the guy's like, I will, yeah. And Teddy Roosevelt's like, okay, reaches down, picks him up, picks up his jacket, puts his jacket back on, sits down at the table, and says, I'll wait for my drink. And the guy walked over. Everyone's just like, the guy walks over, gets the drink, and the barkeep is pretty much like, I'm going to go ahead and get that drink poured. You know, I'm not about to get punched. Gives the guy the drink. The guy walks over, sets it down, and the guy's getting ready to leave. And Roosevelt's like, did you pay for this drink, or am I supposed to pay for it? You know, and the guy's like, well, I didn't pay for it. And Roosevelt's like, before you leave, make sure you pay for it. The guy walked over and paid for his drink and then walked out. Complete shame and humiliation. You tried to bully someone and he just beat you up. That's brilliant. Sorry, I was a little late on the cough button. That's one story. The second story, no, I'm sorry. That was 1A. We'll call this 1B. So you get 3. 1B is he'd been going from New York, Washington, out to the Badlands on a train because he had a ranch out there and he had cattle and sheep and all kinds of stuff. He was a cowboy. The man was a legit cowboy. And he had ranch hands that took care of the property, and there was this guy who lived in this Badlands area who was like the guy. You didn't mess with him. And he could make your life hell, or he could make your life easy. He made your life whatever best suited him. So if making your life hell meant his life was better, that's what it was. If making your life good meant it benefited, that's what I mean, it benefited him more, then he would make your life good. Whatever put him in the best situation, whatever benefited him more. Money, land, whatever. So this guy, he liked Teddy at first because Teddy was a no-nonsense kind of guy. But after a while, people really started to like Teddy because Teddy was very good. He was just a nice guy, really fair. As long as you weren't rude or obnoxious or you tried to bully him, he could be the best friend in the world to you because he really just was a good person. He just didn't take shit. So this guy, Teddy Roosevelt, has his farm, and this guy has a farm, and I want to say that their farmland touched, like, you know, the acreage kind of, they touched each other. I want to say that. And so, but they both had a lot of acres, so it's not like you're not exactly looking out and seeing the other guy's house. He may live miles away from you. So one day, the big bad guy who ruled the land was really nice to Roosevelt. Roosevelt got on a train and left. And the guy decided, I'm done with this whole Teddy Roosevelt thing. I'm done with this guy. Because people started hearing about who he was coming out, it was coming out west. People started realizing, okay, well, this Teddy guy is actually somebody, he's important in New York. He's a fancy guy. He was no longer dressing like the fancy guy. He was wearing the cowboy hat and the ranch-looking guy. He embedded himself into what it should look like, and that's what he became. So when he left, this guy goes to Roosevelt's ranch, knocks on the door. The ranch hands are there. The guy brought his goons. Roosevelt's ranch hands open the door, and they know who it is, and they know that he's friendly with Roosevelt, but they also know who he is, and they know that he's a scary guy. So they open the door, and this guy announces, all of the cattle, all of the sheep, all of it, it's mine now. And they're like, was this a deal that you worked out? And I want to say the guy, they questioned it. And I want to say, I don't know if it was him, but somebody who was with him maybe, pulled a pistol with the butt of the gun, holding the gun like this, and they just, right on the guy's head. And the guy dropped, and he's holding, he's bleeding. And the guy's like, you didn't hear me. All of this is mine now. And the other ranch hand, there was like two of them. And they're kind of like, okay, take what you want. Just like, don't hurt us. Don't kill us. And he goes, the bad guy goes, do me a favor. Pass this along to Teddy. If he comes back to the Badlands, he's a dead man. He better come back with guns. Or he better come back with weapons or an army, because he's a dead man. And that was this guy's way of just getting rid of people. So he leaves, takes all the animals. They immediately go and they wire Teddy in New York or Washington, and they're like, this guy just took all of your livestock, hit him with a gun, and threatened to kill you. The response Teddy gives is, I'm on my way. And they're kind of like, nope, that's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, did you read the last part of the telegram? It said, he wants to kill you if you come back. Teddy had already left. He's on a train, headed back. So, Roosevelt goes to his ranch. Now remember, they kind of knew the comings and goings based on what they would hear in the newspaper. They would know there was a break, okay, Roosevelt's coming out. Or there's stuff going on, Roosevelt's gone, he's busy on the East Coast. So they're all expecting him to be gone. He comes back like a day or two later, or maybe it was like the next week. It was really, he wasn't home very fast. He returns, goes to the ranch, checks in on the people, makes sure they're good, then changes into his ranch hand kind of outfit, throws on some boots, a couple spurs, cowboy hat, and a gun belt with 2 6-shooter pistols on the side, like you'd see a cowboy wear. Jumped on a horse, trotted on along, and went to that guy's house. He walked up on the porch. The guy had his door open, but he had a screen door, and it opened up and just. Roosevelt walks up on the porch, knocks on the door, steps back like 3 or 4 spots near the steps to go down off the porch. The guy comes walking out, and he goes, Teddy, is that you? Teddy goes, yep. Guy walks outside and says, what are you doing here? Teddy pulls both of his guns, points them at him, and says, you said I might need guns or an army. Well, I'm here by myself. And he just kept his 2 guns on him. He just kept, you said I might need guns or an army. And I brought no army. And the guy's like, okay, because the guy didn't expect this. The guy's like, okay, well, what I meant was, and then he cocks back those hammers, and Roosevelt's like, make your next words count. And the guy's like, oh, like he didn't say it, but in his mind he's thinking, oh shit, I'm about to get shot to death by this guy. And I should have expected it because I saw him knock out another man. So the guy's like, there's been a misunderstanding. And Roosevelt's like, that's what I thought. I don't know if he did the spin. And he said, I'm going back to my ranch. I'll expect the animals by the end of the day. Jumped on his horse, left. And that guy had to go get all the livestock that he took and take it back to the property. And then Roosevelt's out there counting all of them. And Roosevelt's like, I'm missing, 3 sheep. I'm missing 2 cattle. I'm missing this. And the guy was like, I can't find them. And he was like, well, they were here before you took them, so I'll take yours in place. And so the guy had to give up his animals in return because, some animals were lost, which they weren't exactly lost. They were more than likely just on the guy's property and just had wandered off to an area they didn't see him yet. So he had to replace Roosevelt's animals with his own. And then I think later on the guy found Roosevelt's animals and he brought them. And Roosevelt was like, oh, I appreciate that, And the guy was like, oh, I'm going to get my animals back. The kind of like, I'm going to hold these animals until you... And Roosevelt was like, nah, I'm keeping them now. And the guy was like, cool, yeah, okay. That's probably how that should work. I'll see you later. And he left. So Teddy got his animals and then like 5 or 6 more, different ones. And I think he even got a horse out of the deal. Roosevelt was the man. The last one, and I don't know if I've told this story before, but I don't know how common it is. So everyone knows you call this a stuffed animal or a teddy bear. When Roosevelt was president, and they haven't gotten into the president talk yet, but I'm just going to get into it now because I've already started. He was an avid hunter, and he was out in the Montana areas hunting, and he was having a terrible trip. No luck. So the scouts that were with him, they woke up early one morning and jumped on their horses and went ahead to try to find some game to hunt. They came across a baby black bear. They caught it and tied it to a tree. Then they went back to the camp in this massive hurry, and they're like, we found some game. We found a ton of animals. Teddy, had started a fire, had his little cast iron skillet on there, and he's cooking breakfast. So they tell him he takes the skillet off, jumps on his horse, and takes off. Now, there was a newspaper guy that was with him. The newspaper guy had not woke up, and I think he woke up in the commotion, and he came out, but Roosevelt had already rode off before he could ride along with him. So they go riding, and they lead him to this area, and boom, there's a bear tied to a tree. And they're like, we found you some game to hunt, go ahead. And Roosevelt sees this baby bear, and he's like, that's not hunting. This is murder. This is not hunting. So he demands that they untie the bear. They do. He scolds them. Then he goes back to the camp. Gets off the horse. Takes his cast iron skillet, puts it right back on the fire, and starts cooking breakfast. So this newspaper person walks up to him and asks him what happened, and he says, oh, they woke me up to go hunting. Instead, they had a bear tied to the tree. And I told him I'm not doing that. That's murder. And this newspaper guy's writing this article, and he's loving it because it makes Teddy look, even though he's a hunter with a heart. He's not just going to kill any animal. He did kill a lot. A lot of animals. So The newspaper guy files his report by going back, giving it to somebody, and they go and they wire it to the East Coast. East Coast picks it up, puts it out in the newspapers. The nation falls in love with Teddy Roosevelt all over again. Teddy Roosevelt and the bear. Teddy's bear. Well, a local toy store person around that area, Wyoming, Montana, he gets a casing, gets some stuffing, stuffs it, and makes it look like a bear. He then calls it Teddy's Bear and puts it out for kids. It sells huge. People are buying it because it's Teddy's Bear. That's the bear that Teddy saved in a little playful kid, stuffed animal way. Later on, over the years, Teddy's Bear got dropped and it just became Teddy Bear. And that was how we got the name Teddy Bear. Back to the video. I hope you found that interesting because I love telling it.
Could have won that quickly. We almost lost it because we didn't have a Navy ready. And his whole thing was we need to have a huge Navy.
That's right.
Like the war, it's actually pretty sick. He gave a speech to, I think either West Point or the Naval Academy, where he was like, it was probably the Naval Academy. He was like, there's a vacuum right now. England's failing. There needs to be one leader.
Someone needs to be
somebody in the world.
Naval power.
Yeah.
He did two things that have lasted till now. I mean, a lot of things, but two are the National Park System.
Yeah.
No one even thought of that. That didn't exist. The idea of like the government should protect vast tracts of land and not allow anybody to fuck with them. No one on the earth did that. Teddy Roosevelt invented that idea. So that exists because of him. They still don't have it. In the Amazon, they don't do it. That's why it's a nightmare, because there's no laws down there that say you can't do this. Everyone just wishes they wouldn't. So Teddy did that, and he made us a naval power. And then he was vice president, which he didn't want. He was like drafted into running for vice president.
Let's talk about this. Was him and the Spanish War?
Yes.
At what's it called? Hill. San
Juan Hill.
San Juan Hill.
And he went over. Yeah, he went over the hill.
He's a dickhead.
He was nuts.
He got everybody killed.
Yes, he did. He was crazy.
Which was cool was the Rough Riders were cool. It was all Old West guys.
Yes.
Like gunslingers, buffalo hunters, Native Americans mixed with New York Irish cops. Like just the nastiest fucking dudes.
Well, back then you could make like a platoon.
Yeah.
Like you could tell the army, like, I'm going to make a...
he just bought a platoon.
I brought some guys, we call ourselves 40. The Rough Riders, and the army's like, okay, you're part of the army,
He was 40.
Yes.
And he had a family. He had a sick wife and a family, and they were like, what are you doing? Why the fuck would you be going to war?
Yes.
And he's like, because he wanted to go to war.
He was also a rich patriarch in Oyster Bay. He had this beautiful house, a big family. He was responsible to a lot of people.
Yeah.
He took over when his dad died. He became like the man of a very sprawling family.
His brother's great.
Teddy's
brother's the one I kind of was like. So in the beginning,
what was his brother's name?
I don't remember.
Was it Kermit? Was it another Kermit?
Kermit might be a son.
Kermit was his son.
Yeah.
He went to the Amazon later with his son, Kermit. They went on little rowboats up the Amazon River and almost died. He got malaria. And Teddy weighed like 80 pounds. This is after he was president twice. This is in retirement. Like he named certain tracts of the Amazon River.
He was so close to dying that he told the son and other people on this trip, leave me. I'm a burden. And everyone's looking at him going, you're this, and a 2-time former president. Yeah, we're just going to leave you behind. They would hate us.
He was crazy. He was
fucking nuts. So then when he was...
Wait, his brother was a drunk who... Elliot was out of control. He was the one who was supposed to be the good son.
Right. But
he got like... He just did what anybody would do if they were a Roosevelt.
Number one always fucks up. Again, that's why Teddy was the number 2 son. He was the... It's like Joe Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was supposed to be Joe Kennedy, his brother.
Donald Trump. Didn't he have an older
He had
brother?
brother John.
Who drank himself.
Yes, that's what
This
older brothers do.
Roosevelt
Jimmy Carter's brother Billy drank
Clinton?
himself to death.
Didn't Clinton have one?
Roger Clinton was younger than him.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, a lot of these guys have older brothers who just couldn't make it.
But it's funny how his brother ended up in like a mental hospital in like Paris. According to this documentary, he was drinking like 6 bottles of brandy a day. He was just
Not bad.
And then the way
life.
he died was like he had delirium from the alcohol, and he was trying to jump out of a window, but he kept just running up and down the steps.
And he had a heart attack.
He had like an aneurysm and a seizure.
Okay, so when Teddy was here's a great
just
story
lost
about
his
Teddy.
shit.
The way where teddy bears come from. Okay, Teddy Roosevelt was in Pennsylvania again. Your fucking state might have been
Incredible
Virginia.
state.
Not much difference. So Teddy was there and on tour as president. And there were some people, every time the president comes to a town, they always they get so excited and they plan stuff. So they knew he loves hunting bear.
Yeah.
So when Teddy hunts bear, he's way up in a mountain alone with a gun, and it's him and the bear, and he might die.
Yeah.
But these people think he's like a gentleman hunter. So they take him, we're going to take you to hunt some bear, and they give him a gun, and they take him into the woods, and there's a bear chained to a tree, a little bear who's kind of emaciated, and it was chained to a tree, and they go, shoot him. And Teddy breaks down into tears.
Yeah.
And he says, for the love of God, let that poor animal go. And there was some journalist there who drew a picture that was like a little sketch that was in the paper of Teddy with this little bear. And it was, people put that together, Teddy and bear, and started making these stuffed bears that looked like Teddy because of this.
Jesus Christ.
So that his first day as president.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's McKinley gets shot.
Yeah.
He got shot by an anarchist named Leon Czolgosz.
Sure.
Whatever. But it was interesting. I think him or...
So now we've lost 3 presidents.
3 guys got shot in the 1800s. So in the last 40 years.
Yes.
And the people are like, this was a gunshot. Today he would have survived in 2 days.
Yeah.
So like Roosevelt found out about it. He was out doing some fucking hiking bullshit.
Right.
Somebody came running up the hill like, he's shot. You're the president. They get there. The guy's fine. He died from infection.
Yeah, a lot of these are bad. This is bad medicine.
Yeah, they didn't-
back then you could cut the president on the finger to death
Yeah.
because of how bad medicine was and how infected wounds got.
Yeah.
So so McKinley's dead.
They're in Buffalo, New York. He gets sworn in.
Yep.
Teddy's the president.
Teddy's the president of the United States. His first day at the White House, he's like walking into the White House, and he runs into Booker T. Washington, black fella.
Hulk Hogan.
Why is it Hulk
There's
Hogan?
Booker T. He's a black wrestler.
Oh, okay.
He is.
So-
It's an iconic moment.
Booker T. Washington.
The iconic moment, they had a bunch of wrestlers around. Booker T, the wrestler, is a black man. And he was talking about Hulk Hogan. And he's given this, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And Hulk Hogan, I'm coming for you. And he said that word. It begins with an N. You see a lot of black people saying it to black people. But they don't like it if a white person says it to a black person. I don't know if you're picking up that word yet. So they white people said it a lot in the 1800s to black people. We picking up on what I'm saying? So anyways, the wrestler, given this little, shit talk promo, he goes, we're coming for you. And he calls the white Hulk Hogan a N-word and immediately realizes what he's just said. And he goes, and he turns, and there's a woman wrestler standing behind him. And she kind of acknowledges with this. Nothing happened to the wrestler. I mean, but it's just one of those moments where he got so into character. He just let it fly.
says, hey, I have some issues I want to talk about. And Teddy says, come to dinner. Just come to the house tonight. Come to dinner. First night in the White House, he hosts a black man. Never happened in the history of the country. A black man being a guest for dinner at the White House. The whole country goes nuts. It's the first event of Teddy's presidency. Is that the Senate, and I could be having some of these things wrong, but the Senate unanimously censured the president for having, there was nobody in the mix. If it was happened today and even like fucking AOC was like, oh no, you don't have him in the White House. Everyone all the way across the board said that's not okay. And they censured him. They tried to throw him out. They're like, maybe we should impeach him. But the best thing they could do is censure him for having had a black man as a guest in the White House. So this was what Teddy did. This is the kind of guy he was. He had him to dinner constantly, and he went on a speaking tour with him. He made him he elevated him more and more because he was just like, fuck you guys.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's 100% true, but I do know that Teddy Roosevelt, if he had dinner with him, it was never again at the White House. He did kind of concede on that. Okay, it was a major uproar. He never came back to the White House for dinner. Now, I can't tell you that they didn't have dinner at a restaurant, which they probably wouldn't have, or had dinner somewhere else, but it was never again at the White House or the president's house.
There's one more I wanted to say about the Spanish Civil War that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
When they took that hill, he was on his horse. Everybody else was like, so they took one hill and then he saw San Juan Hill or whatever it's called. And he was like, we're going to take that. He went off by himself.
Right.
5 guys followed him. 3 of them got shot.
Yeah, because he went all of a sudden. He was like, we're doing this.
Yeah,
and they had to scramble.
He didn't order anything. He
No,
just
into
went.
a hail of gunfire.
So then he came back and one of the guys was laying down. And he was like, how are you going to lay down when I'm up on this horse? Get up. And as soon as the guy stood up, he got shot in the head, killed instantly. Then he led the charge, and they were all, a lot of them died. But
some of them could have been president.
He did it purely out of I wanted to be in war, which is really a terrible, terrible thing. Terrible leader. For that.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
But he won.
He won. It worked out.
It did work out.
And then when he was, another great story about him that I heard was that he would fight whoever was the heavyweight champ.
Oh, yeah.
He would bare knuckle.
Yeah.
So Jack Johnson, I think, had just won the championship. So he was invited. He doesn't know this was going to happen. He's invited to the White House. So I don't know if they had an Oval Office yet.
Yeah.
Comes into the Oval Office.
I believe they did.
And Teddy was like, oh, terrific. And he fucking starts. And Jack Johnson's like, what are you doing? He's like, come on now. Because to him, it was it made sense that the president should fight with the heavyweight champion.
Dude.
And he fought him, and Johnson blinded him in one eye. And Teddy begged him, please don't tell anybody because I'll get it. Because Teddy, he's not supposed to do this. So he used to get people to leave the room. And then he fought him, and he was always blind in that eye, which he was always in denial about because he was sort of ashamed that he did this thing.
Yeah, this guy's insane.
He was nuts. Again, to me, I'm approaching these guys as characters. As fascinating individuals.
But he did a ton of great shit. And then he started going after all these trusts. He started breaking up all these monopolies. He started. So he's the first president from this fucking lull of just garbage presidents to start to actually reform shit.
That's right.
And start to really.
Well, that's what he
became
believed.
a progressive.
When he was governor of New York, he was doing something that was huge. And one of his aides said, if you pull this off, you could run for president. And Teddy snapped at him and said, don't ever in your life say something like that to me. He said, if I add my own career and potential to the math of my decisions, then it'll destroy everything. He said, we never think about my career. And he really did live that way.
Yeah. He personally wanted to be, though. That's funny. He wrote to his lady because he was in D.C. Maybe before he was the vice president. He was in New York. That's when he became the vice president. He was in New York, and that guy that he was in his political party. I forget the guy's name. Was like, send him to DC. I don't want him in New York anymore.
Yeah.
He's a fucking nightmare.
No, he's
fighting everybody.
He
He's
had
fighting
no
everybody.
comfortable place he
Yeah.
could possibly be, but president of the United States.
But he was like, every time I walk past the White House, like, I could be there someday.
Yes.
Like, he had that in there. But
The greatest piece of film on Teddy is that he was the first president to fly in an airplane. And there's film of it. He went in with a hot rod guy who was like a barnstormer guy.
yeah,
And it's just a biplane. And they show him, it's shitty black and white footage, but he gets in the plane and it corkscrews and does. He was already retired. He was kind of older. And you see him get out of it and you see him go like, whoa, whoo, that was crazy. But that's how much of a badass he was.
And that's the thing. He thought that was crazy. When you read about his life, you're like, dude, that's just a cherry on top of insanity. That's all that is.
youngest president, also
Youngest one.
42 or 43. Yeah,
Yes. Won 2 terms
2 terms,
and then
elected.
and then left. Then he decided not to run the third time because he didn't like Republican politics. And then he ran for a third term after skipping a term.
and he split the vote.
on
and
a
then
new
yeah.
what
The Bull Moose ticket.
was it called? The party Bull Moose or something like that.
Oh yeah, we're skipping the part he gets shot.
Yes, he got
yeah. Fucking
shot
shot in
point
the
blank
chest.
in the chest. And he had a big thick thing of his speech.
Yeah.
And he had something else metal. I forget what was that. Something like that. It wasn't a flask, I don't
Yeah,
think. But he had some shit in his pocket. Didn't
the
get
bullet
hurt.
got lodged into his chest though.
Right, it went, but it went
was
into
in his chest.
It didn't get into his
It didn't
heart.
break his muscle.
No.
It stuck there, and then
It got slowed. I knew it went through a book. I think it might have been like a metal, not like a piece of metal. Whatever it was, maybe some kind of pin or something. But it slowed down. It did damage, but he still got shot in the chest before he was going to give a speech, and still gave a 80 or 90 minute speech before finally realizing, yeah, I should probably go to the hospital because I've been bleeding severely. I love the man.
apparently cleared his throat.
Finish the speech.
And he finished. He said it's going to take a lot more to kill a bull moose.
That's what
Which
he
is
said.
pretty fucking wild. Getting shot in the middle of a speech, clearing your throat.
It's a great moment.
Then he personally elected the next guy.
We're going to go ahead and stop there because that's been 15 minutes. Well, over 15 minutes plus me talking. So it's 17 plus. So we're going to stop it there. And then on the next one, I'll go back to the start of the Taft Woodrow Wilson, and we'll probably take it, let's see, 35. We'll probably take it to 52. Yeah, because that'd be another 15 minutes. Okay, so we'll stop it here, and I just have to remember that I'm going to there. Okay. Eisenhower. Eisenhower is another one that I really like. Eisenhower is one of those guys that I didn't know much about. Read about him. Visited his home, museum. And just a lot of respect for him. But this isn't about him. Truman, I really like too. I've always kind of liked Truman. There's just something about Truman that, I don't know, you look at Truman and you just think he's like your grandfather in some way. Like there's something relatable to Truman, I think. I can't picture Eisenhower as my grandfather, but I could picture Truman as my grandfather. And just entertaining. So we're going to end it here. You can donate to the channel through the thanks button. You don't have to. All donations are appreciated. You can request videos. I was requested the first part of this, the presidents, through a donation. I'm doing this one because I wanted to continue. There's 4 of them. Subscribe and give a thumbs up. Those help me. If you give a thumbs down, it just means that you've probably got things going on in your life. You're a terrible person, and I hope your family gets cancer and dies. But other than that, you could be a miraculously great person. I just hope you get killed by being run over by a street sweeper, or maybe you fall down a manhole, or maybe you're out walking and you break both of your ankles and you fall down in the lawn and somebody's not paying attention and they run right over you with their riding lawnmower. Maybe you're going to brush your teeth. Oh, look, you accidentally replaced your toothbrush with a stick of dynamite. Kablooey. You know, things that happen. So until next time, have a good